Welcome back, Jen.
So good to be here.
Thank you for being here.
Mhm.
Everyone, please welcome yourself to A Laugh and Learn, Human Design, and we are specifically talking about authorities. Now, I've just written authorities. I might actually write part one.
Yes.
So stick with us. And I am joined by the amazing Jennifer from My Holistic Self and Holistic Self Counseling. She is also one of the hosts of the Twillo Talk Live, which happens every Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern. All of the links to this are below. So I'm Tarot Stash. Hello. Thank you for being here. Um, this is for entertainment purposes only. Do not make decisions based upon what we say. Seek professional assistance. Really.
I have to laugh only because authorities are all about decision making. Wow.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And so that's I love it. And everybody do, if you want to show your support, like and subscribe. It's free. The show is simulcasting. So this is great. And yeah. So it has been a while since you and I have talked, not too terribly long, but how have you been?
Good. Doing well. Doing well. Just the energies are interesting. Right? And so whether we have a defined solar plexus or not, I think we're all riding some waves right now.
I think that is well said. I also think if people watch your Twillo Talk Live today, you and Tanis talk often about that and the energy and adjusting to the flow. So.
Yeah. We talk about, so Tanis will share a bit about what's going on in the Schumann, where the energies are at, if we've had any kind of solar flares and things like that, just kind of like the space weather report.
Yes.
And then I'll talk about where we're at in the transits in relation to human design. So it's a little bit different than the way astrology talks about it. It's same kind of thing if we're looking at tropical astrology. But yeah, so we just talk about what that energy looks like, what we might be feeling, what could be coming up for us. Yeah.
Kaylee is like, Fogo Pogo, it's been so rough. Yes. So let's say hi to some of the best chatters. Zane, Tarot Token Witchery is here. Hello, Zane.
Hello.
And Kaylee, Fogo Pogo, looking so forward to this, needing some laughs and some learning.
Awesome.
We've got both of those. Flower Beauty Peacock Rainbow is here. Hello, good to see you. Mary Hernandez Walker, nice to see you. And Madame Maru's House of Cards, Maru is here. Good to see you. And Care Bear has joined us.
Awesome. Hello.
It's great. So this is we've been doing this so much and having such a good time. I even have a human design playlist.
Yes.
So it's there. It is linked below. So you can. This is just Gerald. Take this stuff at the pace that works for you, because it can be a lot to take in. And so, and it's all good. So, human design. I have this book, Definitive Book of Human Design: The Science of Differentiation, and hashtag Know Your Limits. Purchase responsibly. And links are below in order to, if you want to get your human design done, you can get a mini guide. It's linked below on how to do that from Jennifer's site. You can also get something really quick from a different site.
Yeah, if you want to get just your body graph, just the basic info,
Mhm.
there's a link on my website, which is what's linked below,
Yeah.
where you can just click on it's for the genetic matrix, and you can just go there. You can get your chart and have it. So if you wanted to have it and know kind of maybe what your authority is while we talk about this, you're
Mhm.
able to do that, and it's immediate. If
Yes.
you want to do the mini guide, I just ask that you give me some time,
Yes.
because I do put it together for you. And so it does take me a little bit of time to get to the emails and to put
Yes.
all the stuff together to get it sent out.
Exactly. And it's important, the thing that interested me about human design, I like the ability to have more information for me to understand how I am in the world.
Mhm.
So, Sonia is here. Hello.
Hello,
Good
hello.
to see you. So, I have created a couple of banners. Anything you want to say before? Oh, here, I should put that up since I made that. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome.
There you go. So,
Yeah, I guess, as to what you were saying before, there is so much information here, right?
mhm,
And so even as we dive into authorities, we're going to talk about what that looks like, but it's one piece of a huge puzzle that is how we're made, right? And what we're here for, and what that looks like, and how we live that, and all that kind of stuff,
yes,
right? And so knowing that, there's there's so much information, we can overwhelm ourselves with trying to figure it all out.
mhm,
So start at the beginning and just, take your time and experiment. That's the whole point of this. Ross says it's the human design experiment, right?
mhm.
That's what we're here to do, to experiment with it, to live it, to experience it, and to see what resonates and what doesn't.
Exactly, exactly. So human design, um, we're talking about authorities, and
Mhm.
authorities is one of the tools for living and making decisions.
Yes.
Did you need to say anything else about the centers that we talked about last time? Do you wanna
Yeah, well, just kind of, I guess, to wrap up a little bit about the centers, because I think that as we get into authorities, it's going to be about the centers, right? So each authority is based on a defined center within your body graph.
Mhm.
So just kind of as a final synopsis, I guess, what we could do is just to help understand like what some of the centers are. So I'll pull out my book here just as
Mhm.
a piece. So you'll notice that on the traditional human design body graph. So depending on who you go to, people have changed the colors. They've done all kinds of different things with
Sure.
all of that kind of stuff. But we're going to stick with this one for a minute. So to start, there's energy centers, right? So your sacral is the main energy center. Your root is an energy center, and your your solar plexus and your will are all energy centers.
Can I show that one too?
Yeah, you got it. Perfect. Um, Now, these centers have different components to them. So, in that sense, those are all of the ones that produce energy. But there's also energy centers in the sense of the root is energy with pressure, the throat is energy to metabolize, and the sacral is energy that's vitality,
Mhm.
right? So as we look at these different pieces, you may want to go back
Yeah.
and look at kind of the different pressures and things that are showing up for you, or what is defined or undefined in your chart, because it's all going to influence
Mhm.
how this works. And so when we talk about authorities, we have kind of our main authority, and I'll talk about this a little bit as we start to actually get into them. But just because we have our main authority, there's still a ton of other things that go into our decision making.
Yes. It is one part of it. It tells us how it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it 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 tells us um how we usually operate.
Mm. So yes and no. we tend, as a human species, to operate out of our not self. And we allow the mind to take over, and we allow the mind to dictate, even though the mind doesn't have a clue what it's doing.
Yes.
The authorities are about how we need to connect with our body, that we need to connect with our other senses, not the mind, in order to really align ourselves with authentic decision making that is correct for us.
Okay, that's helpful. And by the way, there was something here that Sonia wrote. OMG, Gerald and Jennifer, the picture on that book, that's what was in my dream, that I've been speaking of lately. Only it had the Metatron cube in it. Been trying to figure it out. Well,
wow.
There you go.
Yeah, that is pretty incredible. And this one doesn't have the Metatron cube, but I mean, with sacred geometry, all of this is part of that, right? And so understanding those connections, that's pretty.
Trying to, it's the one the government agent was holding again. Okay, there you go. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Delphi Ross is here. Hello, Delphi.
Hello.
All right. So, okay. So where do you want to go with this next? Because this is fascinating.
So we talked about centers, right? And we talked about the not self themes that can arise when the mind tries to kind of take control, right, of the energy and what that looks like. And so what comes up for me with that is this kind of balance of quieting the mind, right? And so we know that there's other things at work here. We talk about mind, body, spirit, all of that kind of connection. And yet the mind still jumps in and tries to get in the way, right? And the mind will do that. And it doesn't matter if what its narrative is true or not, right? The mind is just on autopilot a lot of the time, right? And it's not that the mind is bad. The mind definitely has its purpose, but it's just not where the wisdom is. Okay?
Like the wisdom.
Yeah. So when we're talking about authority, in human design, it's very much aligned strategy and authority, right? And so what we're talking about with strategy is going all the way back to the beginning when we talked about the aura types. So the projector, the generator, the manifestor, the reflector, manifesting generators in there with the generators, right? And understanding the strategy that's specific for each of our aura types. Okay. And when we do that and align with the strategy and authority, we allow the part of us that's connected to source. In human design, it's called the magnetic monopole, right? It could be our soul. It can be so many different things that we align that part of our being with, is the driver, right? And it's guiding us, it's driving us, it's deciding where we go and how we go and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And the mind, the part that we think we are, right? This kind of, it's the personality crystal in human design. It's the, the separate sense of self. All of that is able to kind of take the back seat, right? And the goal is to get that part of us to just observe what's going on and to understand what strategy and authority are doing and how they help us and guide us, so that the mind, which is associated with the ajna, can take all of that information and formulate it and then give it back to the world. And that's our outer authority. So when we talk about inner authority and outer authority, that's what that's about, right? So there is definitely a purpose here for the mind and for how it works, but understanding it's not meant to make our decisions. It's actually to bring the wisdom that comes from honoring our strategy and authority out to the world.
Yes. That's a lot.
That in and of itself, before we even get into authorities, is a lot.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah. Okay. So I took this from this book. This is the definition of inner authority, is the source of inner guidance for making decisions as oneself, one's own personal GPS.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and that's beautiful, right? For those of you that connect with the idea of like, unique geometry, which Metatron's cube, sacred geometry, all of that, we recognize that there's patterns, there's a weaving of the
mhm.
world, right?
Okay.
And the idea behind listening to your strategy and authority is to actually be able to fall into place with that weaving, right?
Yes, that's I believe that's very important. When we are doing things that are lined up,
Mm-hmm.
we are able to knock down obstacles. We're able to handle different situations much more efficiently and effectively. It's when we're butting up against our natural tendencies,
Mm-hmm.
our natural strengths, when
Yeah.
we're not using our strengths. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
Yeah. And you'll see as we go through the authorities how the mind kind of jumps in and tries to take charge.
mhm.
And we can talk about different, tools and things to kind of bring ourselves back.
That's great. And the outer authority is the proper realm of the mind. I love that. The proper realm of the mind. Liberated from decision making and able to use its gifts in service to others.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
That's great. So, okay. I'm going to remove that. So we've got that. So,
Mhm.
all right. Let me get caught up in the chat. I was mentioning that my internet has been a little wonky of late. Not sure why. Um, Mercury's supposed to go retrograde on April 1st, I believe.
Mm.
And Teresa Ford shared, hopefully, future generations will be taught this sort of thing when they are very young and they can integrate their spiritual selves before they go to school.
That that would be a whole new world, a phenomenal one
Would.
for sure.
Yes, it would. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
And the more that we're in a generation now where we're able to learn all of this so that we can teach it to the children, right? And being able to hold space for that. I know, knowing this for me, having a manifester and a generator as children, understanding what that means for their energy is a big deal. Sorry guys, the dogs are chiming in.
Dogs are welcome. Dogs are welcome. Well, and I think and that's the beauty in it is when we, and I've said this before, when we openly talk about things that we're learning and we're working on doing things differently, when we talk about the experience of doing that, it is a beautiful example to those around us.
Mhm.
So, because we don't have all the answers. Well, I don't. I mean, if I did, where would I put them? So,
No, and the idea here is to be able to be okay with that, to be
yes,
okay with the not knowing and to allow things to unfold in a way that naturally resonates for us.
yes, yes. Care Bear said, I'm lost these days without my GPS, so I can only imagine how helpful it is to master your inner GPS.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And Angela Cardamancy Mesquite is lurking. Good to see you.
Awesome. Awesome.
Good to see you. And good. Thank you for everybody who is watching and not chatting and watching the playback. We do this because we hope it's helpful. We hope it gives people a chance to think about things differently. So,
Definitely.
but yeah.
Definitely. It's interesting. Care Bear, your comment made me think about, like the really old maps where things are just kind of not aligned the way that we are now, and they're just a little distorted,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And what came to mind for me was the idea that the mind has that distorted map,
Okay.
right? And that's what it's trying to operate from. And it doesn't want to tap into the GPS, right? And just listen to what the GPS has to say.
Well, the mind is always right in from its perspective.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and Care Bear said absolutely.
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay, so let's take a look at what the authorities are. So all of the centers except for one can play a role in authorities.
Okay.
So here we go. All right. So this is my own coloring of the human design body graph.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so what happens here is you can see the root I don't have colored in. The root is the only center that is not part of our authorities. Okay. So this is our kind of, it is our root. It's our grounding. It's our pressure to grow, to evolve, all of that kind of stuff. But that's not where any of our authority is coming from. All right. So I broke it down into smaller bits here.
I'm going to put you on the big screen.
Okay.
See if that helps.
There you go. Now you guys can see all of it, and I can
Yes.
see where I'm pointing to. So we're going to start over here on this corner, and this is the solar plexus. So the solar plexus takes priority, right? So we have kind of a hierarchy of the way that these authorities take precedent in our experience. So if the solar plexus is defined in your chart, it will be your authority.
Okay.
And then we're just going to go down the line from there. So if this is undefined, the next one that would take precedent is the sacral.
Okay.
Okay. If that is undefined, the next one to take precedent is the spleen.
Okay.
Okay. So now you see how we're going down here, right? And then we've got the will, and I'll show you the different ways that the will can show up. And we've got the G, and then we've got the mental. And if nothing is defined, then we've got that lunar authority that reflectors have, which is about just under 1% of the population that has that. Okay.
And the reflectors are the ones that need a 28-day period before they can make a decision.
They have to follow the lunar cycle. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the point of that is, that reflecting, and when we get to that one, we'll really dive into it a bit more. But it's really about feeling yourself through all of the transit, through all of the energies, to really know what is true for you and what aligns.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Do you want to go back this way?
Sure.
And by the way, Chris, Elemental Cartomancy, is here. Hello, Chris. Says, kind of looks like the tree of life. Yeah.
So I didn't print it. I so should have printed it. I have a theory, and it's not anything in human design specifically. But so Ra doesn't talk about the colors of the body graph, right? He doesn't talk about why each one of these were colored the way that they were. So the only kind of insight we have to that is something that Richard Rudd with the Gene Keys had put out in his book. There we go. I'm going to show you another book. But this is a different one. That's why I said I'll show you a new one.
Oh, okay.
This is Richard's take on human design specifically. So he's talking about Ra's work in this book. And in there, he talks a bit about why we have the colors the way that we have them. So the root, the spleen, the solar plexus, and the throat are brown. And he talks about that being the structure of life, right? So the root is the pressure to grow, just to be alive. The spleen and the solar plexus kind of filter that pressure, and then the throat metabolizes it and gives it a voice and an expression. Okay. The red, the heart, and the sacral, he talks about having these like themes of surrender, right? So the heart is surrender to the individual ego, allowing ourselves to become part of the whole. And the sacral is about surrender to life itself. And then the yellow, the G and the head, he talks about the mystical theme that's associated with that. So the G is evolution through love, and the head is evolution through consciousness. Okay. And then green, the ajna, is the only one that's green. And he talks about how that represents humanity. Right? And so the ajna represents fertility of the human imagination, the ability to, allow our mental pressure living in this, as he calls it, the mental Maya, to give us the ability to kind of navigate that. Right. So the reason I bring all of that up is I have this image, and it's a tree with a sun, right? And how each of these fit a tree. So, and you think about it, the root fits the roots.
Mm-hmm.
The spleen and the solar plexus are like the trunk, right? That brings all of that energy up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the throat is the branches that come out from it.
Ah.
Okay. The red is like the sap that's inside the tree, right? That
Yes.
resin that the tree has that flows in it, and that, you know, will give of itself out of the tree sometimes, that surrender piece, right? And that energy that kind of flows through it. The yellow is the G center and the head, which is like the sun, right? These mystical themes of guidance. So the G center is the guidance center that connects us to our inner source, our inner guidance, that part of us that's the magnetic monopole, the truth that is our higher self.
Yes.
And the head is associated with the crown chakra, which is that connection to source, inspiration, allowing all of that to come through and to come in, right? So very much that sun, life-giving energy that evolves our consciousness, right? And then the ajna, which is green, is the leaves of the tree, right? And how the tree expresses itself. And the fact that the tree has to go through these stages, right, of
Yes.
blossoming, and then the fall where things start to change and to wilt, and then it decays, and then we've got that winter part, right? And when we really look at the cycles of humanity, but also, you know, the ebbs and flows that we go through with the mind, very much in line with the life of the leaves and how that you know, cycles. So anyway, a lot to say. I really resonate with that tree idea. And I do believe that a lot of what is in human design very much intuitively connects to that, even though that's not actually anything that's taught in human design.
Yes.
That's just how I like to visualize it, and how it really resonates for me in the journey that I've had with it.
I love it. And Care Bear said, so cool. That's how I do my chakra meditation, visualizing a tree.
Amazing. Amazing. So you can see how, you know, all of this stuff just goes so beautifully together.
Yes. Well, yes. I'll just say yes. So, as we're talking about authorities, we could go down that rabbit hole another time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's take a look at the solar plexus. Since this is the first one that takes precedent, and this is the first one that, you know, will be. So just under 50% of the population, so about 47 and change, 46 and change, it depends on when you look at it, of the population have a defined solar plexus. So almost 50% of the world has an emotional authority.
Okay.
Now think about our relationship with emotions as a human race.
What relationship?
There we go. So when we talked about the solar plexus, I think that was episode 2. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe it.
Of the centers. So not episode 2 period, but episode 3, episode 2 of the centers. We discussed the emotional wave that is inherent with the solar plexus and what that looks like, right? And the need to ride that wave until you come to a place of clarity.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to get into this part of it as much. Let me just see if I can pull it up so really quick. Sorry, guys. I had it and then I closed my book because I was just being silly.
You know, these things happen, everybody.
Yeah. Anyway, here it is. I had it. Let's see.
I'm going to put you on the big screen again.
Surely. All right. So in the book, it talks about the different types of emotional waves. And so if you wanted to actually do a reading or dive deeper into it, you could take a look at how these actually show up and what the waves actually look like based on the channels that are activating your solar plexus. So if you guys want to take a screenshot of it, you can. Otherwise, if you want to do a reading, that would work. We'll dive into it. All of that to say that as we go through this, we also want to recognize that everybody's going to experience their emotional wave differently.
Yes.
Okay. And I think that that's a really important piece to kind of start with. So just recognizing that what a wave looks like for you may not be what a wave looks like for somebody else.
Yes. And one is not better than the other. They're just different.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Definitely. And depending if you have, multiple channels there, you may have different waves, right? And so from one moment to the next, you might be feeling something, differently regarding that wave. But I think the biggest piece in all of it is recognizing the need to actually ride the wave until it's done, right? Until you come to that place of clarity in order to build harmony and flow into your experience.
that's very helpful because a lot of times we try to rush things.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard to rush things like grief
Mm-hmm.
because it takes the time. It takes as long as it takes, and it never goes away. We just learn how to deal with it
Mm-hmm.
and how to dance with it. And so that's helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So to answer Rose's question, we're talking about the human design authorities. So how we make decisions based on our human design. And to what you were saying, Gerald, that we live in a world of instant gratification, right? Everybody's got a cell phone
Oh
and a
yeah.
computer and everything else, and there's this belief that people are supposed to be able to answer immediately, that everybody is at your beck and call. There's this belief that we have instant knowing. We can Google anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because of that, there's this pressure to be able to make instant decisions.
Yes.
Okay. 50% of the population of the world is not designed to know in the moment.
And by the way, in case you're wondering, I'm not one of those people.
Mm-mm.
So I'm not.
No, I
Um,
don't have a defined solar plexus either.
yeah.
And so I have a different authority, as you do as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't about like everything in life. When we're talking about authority, we're talking about the way that we make decisions for big things in our lives,
Yes.
right? Where we're going to live, what job we're going to take, who we're going to have as a partner, right? Like we're talking about those bigger things.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that we can't use our authority for little things as well. Like, a solar plexus defined might struggle, say, with emotional eating, right? And so maybe there is this component of, I'm going to give myself 15 minutes from the moment that I think I want to have something to really feel into that and go, do I actually want to have this?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I'm going to think about, okay, well, what do I want to have? Well, do I want to have this or do I want to have that? Or, oh, what, maybe that. Right. And so then it's like, okay, I'm going to give myself another, 10 minutes to really
Yes.
see which one feels correct. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use it for smaller things in your life, and that can help you align even more, especially if we bring in things like personal health system and stuff like that,
Yes.
which talk about aligned ways of eating, aligned environments, all of that kind of thing. But the bigger picture, bigger ticket items, that's really what we're talking about with authorities.
Yes, and it would also be helpful to do it on some of those minor things, everyday things, just to get practice with it.
Mhm.
So when there's so we can learn how to work with it
Mhm.
on big things. Sonia said, does that determine if someone is more logical versus emotional in human interaction, and with each other?
Sometimes. Again, we've got to remember not self themes, conditioning, and a lot of other things that come into play. But somebody who has the solar plexus as their authority should allow themselves to be more emotional, to allow themselves to really ride the emotional wave, to
Hmm.
feel the feels, the highs and the lows, and to not just go through it, but really pay attention to how they feel completely when they're going through those emotions.
Yes.
Okay. So we talk about, things like highly sensitive or empaths and things like that. Like all of that will play into the emotions that everybody can feel at any given moment. And it's not that somebody who is undefined in their solar plexus, right, doesn't have emotions. We do, but that clarity that the defined solar plexus is trying to get to is something that somebody who's undefined is able to connect with quite regularly when they're in their own energy.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It sort of does. It's a lot. It's a
It's
lot.
a lot.
It's a lot.
This is why I said we're not getting through all of these in one show. We might not get through the first one in one show.
Well, and that's fine because it takes as long as it needs to take. I think this is important information to get out there so people can be aware of that there is another way of understanding how we interact with the world, how we interact with ourselves and each other.
Yeah.
So Beth is here, and Beth said, I'm a slow burn decision maker.
There you go. So you very well may have that emotional authority needing to take the time.
Yes.
Right?
And Rose Blue had mentioned grief ain't just for physical death. It's for friendship breakups, divorces, custody. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And people experiencing death often get lots of support. When you get a divorce, people act like it's
Yes.
like it's contagious. And Kristen is here. Hello. Good to see you.
Hello, welcome.
So
yeah, and the beautiful thing too with all of this is if we recognize, okay, 50% of the world's population has this emotional authority, and they are not meant to give definitive answers in the moment. How much would the world change if we allowed people to take time for their process?
Fanthorpe worthy on that one.
Right?
So, yes.
Because if we can recognize, okay, somebody with a defined solar plexus has no, as they put it, no truth in the now when it comes to decision making, right? And so if they make instantaneous decisions, then the reality is it's not going to be good for them.
Yes.
And if we care about somebody, we're going to want to give them the time and space that they need to be able to really make an informed for themselves decision.
Yes.
Right. And in the book, like Ra and Linda said, how did they put it? Truth reveals itself in its fullness over time. Right. And it takes that time for that clarity to emerge. And the reality is, for a defined solar plexus, it may never be 100% clear. And so understanding what clarity is for you and what that looks like and at what stage do you feel clear is going to be an important part of your own experiment and your own process.
I like that. It's your own experimentation and your own process. I also think that sometimes for us to have that awareness, we need to have professional assistance. We're not broken. We're just wanting to understand how we operate in the world. So.
And the more we can honor our own process and we can honor our own truth in that, right? Like Rose said, I suck at snap decision making. There is this component of going, okay, this isn't for me. Right. And if we can just be okay with that instead of going, well, I should be better at it. I should be able to make snap decisions. I should be able to just show up and give you an answer. Like if we could get rid of those narratives and just allow ourselves to show up authentically and go, you know what? I'm gonna have to sleep on that and get back to you.
Yeah, I am a slow decision maker. Chris, Elemental Cartomancy asked, is there a way you can influence how you are centered, what your authority is? Sorry, not sure if I'm using terms right. That's a fine question, Chris.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the way that our chart is made is based on our time of birth for our defined for our personality side, and 88 days before for our design side, so our conscious and unconscious. So when it comes to that aspect, there's not a whole lot of change around it. Some people do talk about being more connected to, say, the tropical than the sidereal and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And those charts will show up different for
Yeah.
most people. That again is, I'm going to say, use your own judgment when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
what charts resonate best for you. I have my own experience with it, but that's my experience. So really honoring what feels correct for you. But when it comes to your authority, that's going to be defined in your chart based on your birthday and time and
Okay.
place.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you for the question, Chris. I'm going to get caught up on some of the best chatters. Beth had said everyone would be more relaxed and I think compassionate if we allowed time to enter in.
yes.
I would fully
I
support that.
love where's those hearts.
And Beth also said sometimes truth doesn't reveal for generations.
Yeah. And then the thing is, with all of the authorities and stuff like that, sometimes we get no, not now. We get wait. We get,
Yes.
try again later, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to allow ourselves to be okay with that.
Teresa said, I agree, unless it's my husband needing more time to tell me what he wants for breakfast on the weekends. He's had since last weekend to think about this thing that happens every weekend. It does happen every weekend.
Well, and he also may not really care and may be okay with you making the decision.
Yes. And Book is here. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Says this is resonating.
Wonderful.
And my stress behind decisions affects my stomach. Is this something that can improve these physical side effects? I'm struggling with this.
Yes. So let me geek out on the psychotherapy side of things for just a minute. But our stress levels absolutely will impact our digestive system. So when we think about the vagus nerve and how it's connected through all of the systems, and we talk about like the polyvagal theory, fight, flight, freeze response, all that kind of stuff, one of the things that we understand is that the very first systems to go offline, our digestive system is one of them, right? And so when we are in stress and we're living in a constantly activated state, what ends up happening is we end up with irritable bowel, and we end up with constipation. We end up with all of these issues with our digestive system not functioning properly because it's offline half of the time. Right? On top of that, because we don't honor what our body actually needs when we're in stress, we might not be aligning with our personal health system, eating when we're supposed to, how we're supposed to, and really nourishing our bodies, hearing what it needs at any given moment, which is also going to impact our ability to be healthy.
Yes. Well, that's a reason, that makes sense, because there is a reason they call it "What's Your Gut Say."
Right.
Such a basic thing, and we pay attention to that. And Care Bear said, "Thank you, makes sense."
Yeah.
So
and when we think about emotions too, I just want to come back to this for a minute. So what happens is, let's say something happens and we get angry and we go, I can't be angry. Angry scares me. I don't want to go there. Right? So we stuff it. Now what's happening inside of our body?
It's going to come out sideways.
Yeah. Think about a volcano, right? You're not letting that gas release. So what's going to end up happening? It's going to explode. Now let's just bring that right down to be, pretty blunt when it comes to the body. If we're not letting out the gases, what's going to happen?
It's going to be messy, people.
It's going to be messy, right? But if we were able to just go, yeah, I'm angry. Okay, let me sit with that. Let me ride that wave. Let me figure out where that's actually coming from and why I'm angry, so that I can deal with it, address it, release it. My digestive system is I'm angry, but my system is not offline. Right? So it's not that the emotion is what turns everything off. It's our response to the emotion that turns everything off.
Yes, it's the response to the emotion. You're absolutely right. Chris Chris shared, I sometimes need to allow myself time to come to a decision, particularly if it's something I'm emotionally vested in. Sometimes I say I need to allow myself time to react so I can respond.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
Yes.
Right?
And he continues and says, but my job is all about investigating situations, making decisions based on facts. So I definitely think I've developed my decision making abilities.
Okay.
Hmm.
And the thing is, if it's part of your job and you have to make a decision about something that you've been investigating, that's one thing. When it comes to taking that job or taking a different job, where you're going to live, who you're going to live with, right? Things that really impact that day to day, that's going to be something else entirely,
Yes.
right? And so there might come a time, even in your job, where you go, you know what? I don't have all the facts, or I have all the facts, but it's still not clear. And you may need to take some time to
Hmm.
process that and allow yourself to come to clarity. And that's okay too. The big piece in all of it is honoring what you need in the moment and being okay with whatever that is.
I think for me, the challenge is knowing in the moment what it is that I need.
Mhm.
And therein lies taking time would help with that. And Chris reminded us the best chatters love a good flatulence reference.
There we go.
So, but yeah. And
Hmm.
by the way, Heather Caldwell has arrived. Hello, Heather. And Teresa Ford said, so it's a living in fear or love thing with emotions. It seems to always go back to that.
Hmm.
It is our emotion. It's our resistance to the emotions that screws us up and blocks us.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and how we deal with others pressuring you. Yeah,
Yeah.
ooh, yeah,
And this is a big, big piece, right? Because how many times we pressured into jobs. I need a response by next Tuesday, right? And it's Friday,
yes,
and you're like, what? Right? Are you giving me a weekend to think about it?
yes.
Or even relationships, right? Like, you gotta make a commitment or I'm out of here, right? Like we have those things that come up for us that put this pressure on. And honestly, if somebody is not willing to wait for you to have your process, they might not be a good fit for you. And that
That's true.
that might be a great sign that, you know, you don't need to make a decision. Sometimes not making that decision is enough to understand what is maybe correct or not correct in that moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. Hmm. This is so good. Now we're at 50 minutes,
And
and
we've gotten through most of one.
we've gone through most of one. More people have come in, so I
Mhm.
appreciate the best chatters being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mm.
I know many people are going to be watching this back, and I'm glad about that. This is why we do this. I just love this. One of the things that I'm looking forward to is, well, and I need to get a group of people together to actually not read the book, but consider the book as I look at um, my body graph and go, what's that mean? And because I think there's a nice way of other people have a perspective that can clarify things for me.
Mhm.
Um, Beth said, jobs, corporate or medical, etc., are about instant, correct decisions, and that's a sign of success.
I like that you put the quotes around it.
Hmm.
Right? Because that's a perceived sign of success,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, and Teresa said, when you feel the universe loves you and has your back, then you're less fearful. Of course, it's a choice we have to make every moment.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And sometimes not making a decision is actually making a decision.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, um,
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. And the thing is, with all of that, like, okay, so in human design, because that's what we're using as our framework, Ra talks about authority as the decision maker, but we all know that nothing happens in a vacuum, right?
Mhm.
And so that's our authorities too, right? We have our defined and undefined centers that we have to take into consideration, our
Mhm.
profile, our cross, our personal health system, right?
Yes.
Like all of that plays a role in this. And so when we talk about authorities, like with the solar plexus, right, we're talking about, I like to call it the gatekeeper authority.
Ah, yes, that makes sense.
Okay. So this is the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper operates at its best when we're aligned with our personal health system and when we're following our strategy. So you can see the interconnectedness. It's like there isn't really one that comes before the other. They all have to kind of unfold together.
Yes.
And we have to work with that in order to make sure that our gatekeeper is operating properly.
Well, yeah, because goodness, if the gatekeeper is not operating appropriately, then the wrong things come in, like a fire hose rather than a dribble.
Right.
Yeah. So, and by the way, Thomas from Tarot Your Way is here. Hello,
Hello,
Thomas.
hello.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, hmm,
So let's see. Let's think some, I guess, takeaways for the solar plexus, since that's what we've
mhm,
done. We'll just stick with that one for
yes.
today. So avoid spontaneous decisions for important life changes.
Hmm.
Um, allow, let's see, allow the full spectrum of emotions to happen. So you want to feel all the highs and you want to feel all the lows and everything in between in order to really have a clear sense of what something is going to be for you and if it's correct or not.
Hmm.
And as you're going through all of those, pay attention, right? This is where the observer part really comes into play. Where I like to use the analogy when I talk about the solar plexus of the ocean. Just one, I love the ocean. Two, there's waves.
And there's water.
And there's water. But so we could be the surfer out in the waves, trying to ride them. And maybe we're good at it, maybe we're not. I tried surfing before. I'm not good at it. There is that component. Right. And so we can do that. And there are times where we will ride the wave and it'll be beautiful. And there are times where that wave is just going to crush us and drag us back to the beach. And
Yes.
there are times where that undertow is going to pull us right back out again.
Hmm.
Or we can be the beach bum, sitting on the beach, allowing ourselves to experience the waves through observation.
Hmm.
Right? We see the crash of the wave and we can feel its heaviness just by looking at it and listening to it
Hmm.
and having that rumble happen. And we can understand the pressure of the undertow that has to come back out in order to make that wave roll again. Right? And we can also pay attention to the ebbs and the flows and when that starts to calm, right? When it's high
Hmm.
tide and low tide. And the
Right.
more that we allow ourselves to observe all that it is, the more we're able to experience all of it without being tossed around by it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And that is ultimately the goal here. You want to feel all the feels, you want to experience all the experiences, but you want to do it as the observer.
Hmm. That's hard to do.
Mhm.
Excuse me. That's hard for me to do. I will note
Mhm.
that one. I don't know about the rest of you, but yeah.
Yeah. And so this is the work. This is the experimenting. And you know what? There is nothing wrong. I loved going into the water and riding the waves.
Hmm.
Right? We'd have those little boogie boards and the wave would be coming and be like, okay, get in position, right? And then you'd let the wave take you back to the beach. And there are definitely times where that wave took me right under. Right.
Yes.
And I went, oh, I'm in trouble for a
Hmm.
minute or two.
Yes.
Right. And it's the same thing with our emotions. There are times where we will ride it and it'll be like, okay, that release was so powerful and I needed that. And that was beautiful. And there are times where it feels like, we can barely keep our nose above the water, right? And we need to call for a lifeline, and that's okay too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Candy Mullen is here and said, let's see, so timely. My Empowering Connections group is evaluating human design and how we can better understand how to operate. We'll have to watch the replay. We've got a playlist for human design just for this. Just for this. This is great. So, I don't understand this system, but it feels like it helps a person design their work clothes for this incarnation.
Yeah, that's
I can see
a
that.
really cool way of putting it, Teresa.
Yeah, nicely done, Teresa.
Yeah, it's about stepping into, what we came here for, right? And it's not just about finding, purpose. It's really about living aligned and allowing ourselves and accepting ourselves.
Yes.
However that shows up for us.
Yeah. Beth shared, if I were still in college, I'd love to research a paper on how society subliminally encourages us to make quick decisions. Can't help but think there's a lot of subliminals.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, think about it. 70% of the world are generators, whether it's manifesting generators or generators. They're here to respond to things. They're not here to initiate.
Yes.
Okay. There is less than 10% of the world that are manifestors that are here to actually initiate anything. The generator child comes into the world and they're told, go for it, blaze a trail, push, make things happen. Not in alignment. Those two manifestors that come in because of the manifesting energy are told, stop it. Don't do that. Don't push forward. That's not how you're supposed to operate. And that initiative is squelched, right? And then projectors and all are here and they're meant to step back and guide, and they're being told, generate, you go, burn yourself, keep going, keep doing, right? So, and reflectors are just going, hi, what in the world is this going to? But yes, there is, if you were to do a paper on that, you would definitely see how we are programmed, how we are conditioned to these not self traits that don't honor us, that don't honor our vitality, that don't honor our ability to really embrace what's going to light us up in this lifetime.
Right, because I think a lot of times we allow other people tell us what lights us up instead of knowing internally what it is that lights us up. So, and follow the rules. The deaf knell of new ideas. Yeah. Hustle.
Yeah. So if any of those last comments there are being followed by somebody with a solar plexus authority, understand how damaging that can be.
Okay. So next time we will talk about authority 2.
Yeah. We'll get into the sacral because that's the next one.
Sacral, yes. Yes.
So for generators, if you do not have a defined solar plexus, you do have a sacral authority.
Okay.
So we're talking about 70% of the population. You either have what we just talked about or what we'll talk about next time.
Okay. That's good to know. And if you do want to get your body graph, links are below to Jennifer's website. There's also, you can get a mini guide, which she actually creates. So it takes a little bit. And so I think, it's a great little document. Obviously you can tell I've written all over it. So that's wonderful. And Candy said, have a defined solar plexus.
So this is your authority.
Yeah.
What we talked about today, experiment with it. See if it resonates. See, what you can do to really honor that authority within you. Again, like we said, right? No spontaneous decisions. Really allow yourself to ride that wave. Wait for clarity before any big decisions are made.
Mm-hmm.
And be aware of the pressure that other people are going to put on you to make a decision quickly, right? And so set that boundary and honor yourself.
Yeah. Rose Blue said, "Isn't your North Node what you doing?" I don't know.
Okay, so what you're doing, not specifically, it's where you're going.
Mm.
So I don't have my body graph in front of me. Let's see if I can
I have mine.
the book. Perfect. Okay, so the top 4 squares there, you'll see the Sun and Earth personality and the Sun and Earth design. So they're the top 4, the 2 top black, 2 top red squares. Those represent your incarnation cross. So if we want to talk about purpose, why you're here, that's what we're looking at right there. Right below that is your North Node, and your North Node is the direction that you're going to, right? Whereas your South Node is the direction that you're coming from. So when we really look at our evolution through this, the North Node can be our guide in the sense of it's the direction that we're going in, right? But how do we get there, and what does that look like, and how does that actually unfold in our experience? We're going to look at our profile lines. We're going to look at our incarnation cross for that. And we're going to look at that personal health system as well to really understand what that looks like and how that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that makes sense.
Okay. I'm still learning all of that, so I have the hiccups now.
Oh my. Yeah. So again, we haven't really delved into the planetary representations on the sides. That's not something that we've gotten into yet. It definitely does align. And so when you're talking about astrology and bringing that in that way, you know, North Node is definitely going to guide us, and the energies for the transits specifically. So when you talk about like the houses and the gates, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
those are going to come into play with how we experience that in our day to day. That being said, you know, nothing happens in a vacuum, right? Like all of these things
Mm-hmm.
are interconnected, and they all play a role in this journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you again.
Mhm.
So I guess we'll be doing this again. Let me do it this way. I'd like to invite you back so that we can continue this conversation. Would that be okay?
That resonates. I would love that. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. And if you want more of Jennifer, today on her channel is Twillo Talk Live at 5 p.m. Eastern with Tanis
Mhm.
from Twillo Community Lifestyle. So, and
And we'll talk about the transits and
yep.
what's going on in the energy right now. And then we pull a card and we just have authentic conversations about what's going on.
It's beautiful. It's great. So, all right. Thank you again, everybody. If you are so inclined, please do like, share, and subscribe. The playlist for the human design is in the description, and it's also on my channel. And you are putting these comments, these on your website, aren't you?
Yeah. So on my website, the link that is below for my Holistic Self website with the human design page, I put them all in there. And I actually put them in order, not that we did them, but in the order that it's best to listen to them.
That's smart. That's smart. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.